Welcome to the second episode of How to Make a Doom WAD. If you haven't watched the first one, it's basically just a summary of different software I'll be using throughout this series. So, this episode I'll be showing you how to make a basic weapon. In fact, I'll be showing you how to make three. A bullet one, a projectile one, and a melee one. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. So, I'm going to be using Slump Editor. So I'm just going to open that now, and I'm going to click on this little W at the top left, New WAD. Now I'm going to click on this floppy disk just to save it, and I'm going to save it in my How to Make a Doom WAD folder, and call it How to Make a Doom WAD. Now, to start off, I'm going to create a lump. Now lumps are basically just files within a mod. I'm not quite sure they call them lumps. So I'm going to click lump, new, and I'm going to call this decorate, which is spelled like this. Now decorate is what you use to code in things like items, monsters, weapons, decorations like trees, hanging corpses. Basically anything that you can program an AI or that has anything that is physical or interactable. Understandably, it may not be the best definition, but once you see the series progress, it will make more sense. So, I'm going to create what's called an actor. So, like I mentioned before, actors are basically your trees, your weapons, your monsters, items, power-ups. So, I'm going to create a bullet weapon, and I'm just going to call it Rapid Gun. I'm going to call it the Rapid Gun, just to keep it simple. So, I'm going to type actor, space, Rapid Gun. Now, if you're using something like Skulltag or Zandronum, or an engine that shows you the name of the weapon when you select it, if you want a space in the name, you put it in quotation marks like this, and you can put as many spaces as you want. I'm going to keep it like that for now. Now to tell Doom that this is a weapon, I'm going to put space, colon, space, weapon. Now to place this into a map, you want to use what's called a Doom WAD number. That's like its own unique identification. It's so when you place something down with a particular number, so for example the chain gun, that has a Doom WAD number of 2002. When you place something down with the WAD number of 2002, it'll go through all of its actors, and because the chain gun is labelled 2002, it'll place the chain gun. So if I give this particular number, it'll go through its library, find this number, and place the rapid gun. If this has the same Doom WAD number as something else that already exists, though the effects can differ with different engines, normally it'll just replace it. If I give it the same Doom WAD number as the chain gun, it'll spawn a chain gun. But I'm going to give it its own, a number that's never been used, and the best place to start off is 25,000. So there's nothing really as number of 25,000. So in this WAD, the only thing that has this number is the rapid gun, and we're going from there. Okay, so you're going to press enter and put open, I call these squiggly brackets. So we're going to start off with what's called a selection order. What that means is when you run out of ammunition for a weapon, it's going to switch automatically, unless you code it to not do that. But by default, it will switch weapon. So the higher the number, the less chance it has to switch to that weapon. It's good as a safety measure. So if you're surrounded by monsters and you're shooting them all and you run out of ammunition, you don't really want to switch to a rocket launcher, for example, because you end up blowing yourself up if you're holding down the trigger. So it's good to have like a sensible number. So basically, you're going to type in weapon.selection order, and I've given it a selection order of 700, which is the exact same as the chain gun. Now we're going to code in the ammunition type. So I'm going to start off with how much ammo it uses. So you're going to type weapon.ammo used. Since it only fires one bullet, I'm just going to give it a number of 1. You can give it any number, so long as the number is less than your ammo reserve, for example, if the maximum number of bullets you can carry is 200, you don't really want to give it 201 or anything bigger than that, because it won't fire otherwise, because the game will think you haven't got enough ammunition to fire this weapon. So since it only fires one bullet, realistically it'll use one bullet, but you can give it any number you want. Next, we're going to tell it how much ammo this weapon will give you when you pick it up. So weapon.ammo give. Now, like I said, this can be any number you want, but I imagine a gun like this will have, I don't know, 25 round magazine. So I'm going to give it number 25. Now I'm going to tell it what type of ammunition to use. Now, you can create your own ammo type, but that will be covered in another episode. So for now, I'm going to tell it to use an already existing ammo type. So I'm going to type weapon.ammo type, open bracket, and I'm going to say clip. That's the same ammunition that the pistol and the chain gun uses, and the minigun if you're using skull tag. Now, there's multiple ammo types. Since this is going to be a Doom WAD, I'm going to be using Doom ammunition types. You can use ammo types from other games like Hexen, Heretic, Strife, but picking those up in Doom will be impossible because there's no instances of those ammo types being in Doom. However, you can code them to be in Doom, and there are ways to put them in Doom without having to actually place them, but I'll come to that later. For now we're keeping this basic. So I'm going to use a Doom ammo type. Other examples could be rocket ammo, cell and shell. They're the Doom terms. Now there does exist ammo types such as clip box, shell box, rocket box and cell pack. They're just larger versions of the ammo. So you've got the normal one and you've got like a much bigger one, which gives you more ammo when you pick it up. They're all the same, so clip box is the same as clip, but clip is like the original ammo type, so you want to use the original ones, if that makes sense. So for example here, I'm using clip, not clip box. Now I'm going to give us a pickup message. That's the message that displays at the top left when you pick up a weapon. So I'm going to type inventory dot pickup message and quotation marks. So you can put anything like, you have acquired the rapid gun. You can put absolutely anything. You can even put get lost or just put the name of the weapon, rapid gun. Now I'm going to give us an obituary. That's only really relevant in multiplayer. So it's when you kill a player, a message will display at the top left for everyone saying who killed you or who you killed and how you killed them. Like anything like this, you can give it anything you want, but I'm going to keep it relevant, so I'm going to type in obituary. Now there's two codes in this, two little codes. There's %O and %K. %O refers to the victim and %K refers to the killer. So I can put %O was riddled by %K's rapid gun. So if I kill someone called John in a deathmatch session with this weapon, it will say John was riddled by Mr. Skulltag's rapid gun. Now we're finished with that part of the coding. Now I'm going to give it its states. So I'll type in states and open bracket. I'm going to stop coding for now, and I'm going to find some resources to use. So I'll hop onto Google Images. I'm going to type in Doom weapon sprites. Now, since I've called this rapid gun, I'm going to find something that represents a automatic weapon. So yeah, I'm going to use one of these. It's always good to find out who made these sprites. It's always a courteous thing to reference them in your WAD. So I'm assuming Pisty Panks made these weapon sprites. So I'm going to save these in my How to Make a Doom mod folder. So I'm just going to locate that now. So I'm going to open this with a program called GIMP. It's a free to use program. It's a good piece of software. It's much like Photoshop in a way. It's like a more basic version of Photoshop. You can use anything you want, so long as it can create transparent backgrounds. Okay, so I'll look at this sprite right here. This one right here. Oops. So yeah, I like the look of this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the rectangle select and I'm going to crop this out. So I'll put it in a box. I'm going to press Control C to copy it, and I'm going to click New, File, New. Let's give it a sensible size, so about 250 by 250. Now I've noticed that's a bit too big. Now, when you put sprites in a Doom WAD, it's not the sprites, it's not that little sprite there. It's the box as a whole is the sprite. So anything that fits within, so I'd say give it a box that's not too big, otherwise it won't cause any problems. It just becomes a little bit difficult to align, but I'll show you once we get to that part. So I want to give it a much smaller box. So this is 150 by 150. This is perfect to work with. Now I'm going to right click on this layer and click on to new layer, and I'm going to delete this white background. Otherwise there'll be just this weapon in a big white box. We don't want that. So this is the sprite as it is. It's perfectly fine. So I'm going to click File, Export As. I'm going to locate my How to Make a Doom mod folder. Now, I'm going to give this a particular name. So with sprites, there's a way of naming them. First of all, we want to give it a 4-letter name. So I'm going to call this, give it RAPI, short for rapid. Then I'm going to type the letter A in capitals. That means frame A. It'll make sense when it comes to coding, but there are frames with each sprite. So it goes RAPI frame A. And then I'm going to type in the number 0. That's saying that there's no rotations. Rotations are only really necessary if it's anything other than a weapon in the first person perspective. For example, this is the first person perspective. Rotations won't really work since it's the sprite will follow you wherever you look. Rotations are only really for if it's on the ground. So this is going to be RAPI frame A 0 rotations. I'll click export, and then I'm going to give it a muzzle flash. Now, if you're not sure what muzzle flash is, it's basically just that little, it's like a mini, like a small spark at the end of the weapon when your weapon fires. Not to sound condescending, this is just for those who are new to this kind of thing. Now I'm going to give us a pretty high quality muzzle flash, so I'm going to type in muzzle flash. Now I'm going to find the one that I like. I like this one. This looks nice. Open a fresh canvas to place this image in, just so I can modify it to fit the weapon. So I've pasted it to new layer. I'm going to delete the white background, and then I'm going to use the magic wand tool to get rid of the background of this. In fact, I'm just going to undo that and I'll increase the threshold so it's more tighter to the muzzle flash itself. I'm going to try and get to a point that I like. I think that'll do. That'll be nice. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut. Control X to cut. Now we want to make sure is that this yellow box, that's focusing on what I cut out, and if I paste the muzzle flash now, it'll be contained within this box. We don't really want that. So undo that with Control Z. I'm going to create a new layer just for the muzzle flash. I'm going to press Shift S to put this in free transform mode, and I'm going to hold Control to ensure that it remains even when I scale it. So I'm about happy with that. You can move things around by holding the center, so you can place it where you want it and shrink it accordingly. It's going to be small muzzle flash, since it's just a basic weapon, nothing too fancy. So I'm happy with that size. I'm going to click Scale to scale it down to that size, and paste it to a new layer. Now what I'm going to do is, since I want this to be behind the weapon to give the illusion that it's firing, I'm going to drag this a layer beneath this weapon. Now it looks like the weapon is firing. So I'm going to save this, so export as. Now I'm going to give it the frame B. So frame B, export, export. Now we need to give this a sprite for when it's on the ground. So I spotted this picture right here, and I quite like the look of this sprite here. It looks quite fitting for the rapid gun. So I'm going to copy this. Who made this, I wonder? So this was made by Fantron on Steam. Maybe try to get my little references right. I'm not quite happy with where it's pin pasted in this little box here, so I'm going to drag this across by pressing M and holding mouse 1 to drag it. And just want to focus on this one here. So I'm going to paste this to put this to new layer. Holding Control, I'm going to scroll my mouse wheel to zoom in, and I'm going to crop this out. Now you may notice when I crop this out, hold mouse 1 to crop it, it's showing a number at the bottom, 139 by 36. If you can remember that number, when I copy that and click New, you can type in 136, and I've forgotten the other number, so I'm just going to put 60 for safe measures. And yes, it fits just perfectly in this little box. I don't want a threshold too high because I don't really get rid of anything. Accidentally delete the sprite as a whole. See that? That's quite nice. I like that. To the background. Export as. Now you can give this any frame you want. I'm gonna give it Z. I always give like the sprite when it's on the ground a frame of Z. It's personal preference. You can give it any frame you want, but I'm trying to keep this as basic as possible. So I'm gonna give it a frame of Z and 0 rotations. You can give these rotations if you have the sprites for it. At the minute, I don't really have the sprites to give this rotation, so I'm just going to give it just no rotation. So basically, no matter what angle you look at it at, it will always face you from that view. So export, export. Now we can get back to coding this. Now you can put this in any order you want, but this is the order I prefer. So I'm going to give it a ready state. This is when it's not firing, it's in your hands and ready to use. So I'm going to type in ready with a colon, and beneath that I'm going to type in RAPI A1. That means it's RAPI frame A for 1 tick, 1 Doom tick. Now Doom ticks are quite strange, as 1 tick is 1/35th of a second. So making things close to real time can be challenging, but if you can do the math, you should be good. So that was terrible, I know. So anyway, to make sure this weapon is ready to use in its ready state, I'm going to type in A_weapon ready. That tells it that it's ready to use. If it doesn't have that, it'll just be a plain sprite, and you want me to fire it, you want me to switch properly, it won't really work. And since we're done with that state, I'm going to type in loop. Now I'm going to give it a select animation. So, select colon RAPI A1 A underscore raise and type in loop. So when you select that weapon, it will have that animation of the weapon going up. It does it all for you. You can, however, speed this up. So if you press enter underneath that and type in RAPI A0 and A underscore raise, that will speed up slightly. The more A's you put, or more frames you put, the quicker it will go. There's only so many you can put until it is instant. It goes straight, instant. You don't even see it raise or go down. That's only really good for if you want to make your own custom animation when you select the weapon. I'm going to give it 2 A's for now, so it's like, it's quite speedy when it comes to switching to the weapon. Hence the name Rapid Gun. Now I'm going to give it a deselect animation, which is the exact same as select, but you type in lower instead of raise. In fact, I can just copy that for quickness and put deselect. It doesn't matter about capitalization. Now, capitalization isn't all that important. It just looks more neater, and Slump recognise it if we use necessary capitalization. So at the minute it's greyed out. It will still work, but if I give it a lowercase s, it turns blue. Let's change these to lower. Now I would give it a fire state, which basically when you press your primary fire button, it plays animation and the weapon fires. I haven't really given this any animations or imported the sprites yet, so I'm going to come to that after I've imported the sprites. So I'm going to save my changes and save again. Always save your work, because you never know when it will crash. It's one of them things, you can do so much work, forget to save it, and crashes. Yeah, technology can be cruel like that sometimes. So what I'm going to do is click lump, new, S underscore start, and beneath that, S underscore end. Now that tells the WAD to load anything between these two as sprites. Otherwise it'd be just considered a graphic. Now the difference between sprites and graphics. Graphics are mainly for images, menu pictures, anything that isn't a sprite. Now sprites are basically for your weapons, your monsters, your items, most things that are coded and decorate. There are other things that like for example are graphics but can be coded and decorate, but that's for another time. For now we're going to keep this basic, so all sprites will go in between these two. I'm going to click on S underscore start. So when I import something, it puts it in there, because whenever you click on something and import a file, it'll put it beneath what is selected, so it'll be underneath S underscore start. So I'm going to click lump, new from file, I'm going to my resources folder where my sprites are located, and I'm going to just highlight all those and then add them in. I'm going to save it, because sometimes it can crash. The more work you have on it, the more chance it will crash. Not sure why that is, but just always be safe, always save your work. Now I'm not happy with the way it's imported this. I want the A sprite to be at the top. I'm going to click on this sprite here and click on this green arrow pointing up. You can move it up or down. So I'm happy with it here. So far this weapon is not centered properly. By default it'll always be offset to 0 by 0. Now to make this weapon sprite within your field of view, I'm going to click on offset type and click on HUD/weapon. So that's where it's going to be. So when you when you use this weapon, the sprite's going to be in the top left corner of your screen. I don't really want that. So I'm going to drag this right about here. Now there is like an invisible line where your HUD bar will be. If it's above this line, it will just be like above the screen. It won't really look like it will break the illusion that you're actually holding a much bigger weapon. So that's a bit of a safe space to put it really. Yeah, that's perfect for it. Another thing to do, if you click on the plus button here to zoom in slightly, it's always best to make your weapon give you the impression that it's pointing to the centre. So if it's about here, it won't really look right, because naturally you'd be thinking it's going to fire that way. You're going to fire it in the centre. So I'm just going to place it right about here, so that's near enough aiming at the centre of the screen. So the barrel is pointing near enough to the centre. It gives the brain the illusion that you're aiming it at the centre. So anything you do, any changes you make, click Save Changes. Now, since this has the same box size as this one, see when I hold mouse 1 on it, you can see the box with the sprites contained in. I accidentally moved it, but I'm just going to click No to save changes. So I'm going to look at the positioning. So -173 by -62. That's basically horizontal and your vertical. So paste that. Whoops. Forgot to copy that. I'm using Control C and Control V to do that, by the way. By -62. Save changes, and there you go. Now I want to give this weapon a bit of visual recoil to look like you're actually firing it, because it'll just look a bit strange with no recoil. So I'm going to copy this sprite here, click on this one and paste it so it's underneath, and I'm going to drag this down a little bit like that. Save changes, and then I'm going to rename this sprite, because it can't have two sprites of the same name, otherwise it won't know what to do. It'll just pick any. So I'm going to give this a frame of C. So change the A to C. There you go. And when it comes to this sprite, you don't really want to be on HUD/weapon. I'm going to click on normal, since this is going to be on the ground. Now this is much easier to do, because the guidelines, that's basically where your floor is. So I'm going to drag this so the weapon is about like on the floor, near enough in the centre. If you want to be precise, what you can do is drag it so that's in line with that line, and then you just half this number. So half of 100 is 50, half of 30 is 15, half of 6 is 3, so that's around about 68. Okay, so we're going to come back to the coding part. Oh, save in progress. Now I'm going to give it its fire animation. So I'm going to click type fire, colon. So there are different ways to do fire animations. The way I prefer to do it is to do this. So RAPI A0, anything with 0, it's so fast you don't notice it. It's almost like an instant animation. So I'm going to, since I want this to fire bullets, I'm going to type in A_fire bullets, open bracket. Now Sump tells me all the different parameters there are. So for example, so the order it goes in terms of your numbers is your horizontal spread, your vertical spread, number of bullets, the damage each bullet does, and the puff type. Range doesn't really matter. It's the first few you want to focus on. So I want to make this fairly accurate, so I'm going to give it a horizontal spread of 3. You separate each number with a comma, so 3, comma, space, by 3. So the bullets will fire, will range between 0 to 3 high and 0 to 3 across. The smaller the number, the more accurate it is. If the number is 0, it is pinpoint. If both numbers are 0, it's like fires at the centre of your screen. It's like pinpoint accurate. Now, since this fires a single bullet, I'm going to give it a number of -1. The reason for that, if you just put 1, it doesn't really work with vertical spread. I'm not sure why that is. If it fires more than one bullet, you don't have to put the minus. If it fires a single bullet and has vertical spread, it will give it -1. No idea why it does that, and then I'm going to give it the amount of damage each bullet does. If you're making a shotgun, the number is not divided by the number of pellets. If you make it fire 20 bullets or pellets, and you give it a damage of 20, each pellet will do 20 damage. So just be careful with that. I want to give it a reasonable damage, so I'm going to give it a damage of 5. And then I'm going to give it a puff type. Now you can make your own puff type. It's basically when the bullets hit a wall or something. For now, since it's the basic one, I'm going to give it the puff type of bullet puff. That's the Doom one. Doom bullet puff. So quotation mark bullet puff, quotation mark, close bracket. Okay. We haven't quite given this a sound yet, but I'm going to program it anyway, so when it comes to adding the sound, the code's already there. So I'm going to type in RAPI A0 A_play weapon sound, open bracket, quotation mark, close bracket. Since we don't have a sound yet, I'm just going to leave it like that for now. So when we do give it do import a sound and give it a name, I can just paste it in the quotation marks. Next, you want the gun flash. That's so when you fire the weapon, your player animation plays the firing animation. Otherwise, you'd just be pointing a gun and be no muzzle flash on the sprite. It just thinks you're using a melee weapon. So I'll type in RAPI A0 A_gun flash. That's also to do with the Doom sprites, because you may notice when you look at the Doom sprites, the flashes are separate, because what happens is the animation in the flash state is put on top of the weapon sprite. I like to do the muzzle flashes within the weapons. I like to code the muzzle flash on the weapon sprite. I find it easier. It's a lot less messing around aligning the muzzle flash to the weapon. And plus you can do plus this, I think it's easier in my opinion. Now I'm going to give it a little animation. So I'm going to type in RAPI B1 bright. That means that it gives the impression that the gun is illuminated by the muzzle flash. And then I'm going to type in RAPI C A1, enter, go to ready. And that's the entire animation. So what happens is it fires a bullet, plays a sound, activates the gun flash animation, and the weapon fires and recoils. That's fairly fast. I mean, since it's called the rapid gun, it makes sense. It fires with moderate fire rate. If I put another A in there, it gives it a much slower fire rate. So if you look at the animation, it'll go bang like that. And since I put an extra A, the time it takes to fire the next bullet is slightly longer. I like the fire rate as it is. Now I'm going to give this a flash animation. Since I don't have a sprite to put on top, you can still do this. What I'm going to do is here, so is type in flash colon TNT1. TNT1 means it's invisible. So I won't put anything on top. So just put TNT1 in any of your coding, it'll just be invisible. And I'm going to give it a frame of A, 1 Doom tick, and I'm going to type A underscore light 1. That will very slightly illuminate the room when you fire it. Light 2 is more brighter. Light 0 just means it won't do anything. This doesn't happen all the time, but I've had experiences where when I fired a weapon, the light 1 stays on permanently until I fire another weapon. I'm not quite sure what causes that. There's probably somewhere that I'm going wrong. But what I do to fix that is TNT1A1A underscore light 0. That's just just to mitigate the light 1. So because of how quicker it is, it's a quick flash. To give the illusion that your weapon is firing and slightly illuminating the room. Now to close this off, I'm going to type in go to light done. Now I'm going to give it a spawn animation. You can have custom animations for it's on the ground, but since it's just an ordinary weapon, nothing special, it would just be there on the ground, not doing anything really. Ready for you to pick it up and kill demons with. So I'm going to type in spawn RAPI Z, since I've given the Z frame, -1, beneath that stop. If it has an animation, you're going to just give it the necessary frames and how many Doom ticks to give it. And instead of stop, you put loop. If you put stop, when it's got an animation, it'll appear, do its animation, and then just vanish. But since it's just a single sprite, you put -1. You can put 1 loop, but I prefer to keep it traditional. You put -1 underneath stop. Now that we're finished with that, I'm going to close this off. So I'll put close squiggly bracket underneath close squiggly bracket. Because when you open these, anything contained within it is part of that. And when you finish coding something, you always close it. So if there's 2 opens, you put 2 closes at the end. So anything within that is part of that weapon. Now I'm going to save that, save the WAD. Now I'm going to create a SND info or sound info lump. So I'll click on lump, new, SND info. So this is where you code your sound effects. It's like a big library of all the sounds. So what you do is you type in the name of the sound effects. It can only have a maximum of 8 characters. And you can refer to it as another name. So we're going to go back onto the internet. I'm going to try and find some sound effects. A good place to go would be Sound Bible, I suppose. I don't really use Sound Bible anymore. I used to use it for my films to keep things royalty free. But I'm just going to type in gun. Let's try and find a nice sound. That sounds quite powerful. So I'm going to download this sound from Sound Bible. Put the rest of my resources. Now I'm going to use a program called Audacity. This is an audio manipulation software, which basically means you can edit sound effects, give it things like reverbs, make it louder, make it quieter. But for now I'm going to condense this sound so it's just the... I'm going to get rid of this little pause, using the arrow keys to move this little line around. I'm going to put it there, drag it across, and then delete that little gap, so when you fire it, it's just the... Now I'm not too happy about this rest of this here, so I'm going to drag it across here to about 1.5 seconds. Delete that. Now, because this is me, you don't have to do this, but I like to keep it like neat, because there's nothing worse when you fire a gun and it's got the and it just stops. There's no drop off. So I'm going to click on Effect after highlighting the sound. Fade out. It just makes it sound a bit better. So it doesn't just stop abruptly, it fades out. You don't have to do that, but this is just me being me. So I'm going to click on File, Export. MP3s don't really work with Doom. It's either waves or OGGs. OGGs are probably the best because they're much smaller. Waves are quite big. When you've got loads of waves, it takes up a lot of space. So I'm going to use OGG for now. The names of the lumps have to be within 8 characters. Otherwise, it will just crop off anything greater than that. Just so I know what this belongs to, I'm just going to call it Rapid G or Rapid F. So it's saying it's the Rapid Gun fire sound or just Rapid F. I'm going to save that. Okay. And now I'm going to import this into my Doom WAD. Don't put it in the sprites section, otherwise it can crash if you try and select it and it won't really work. Make sure it's outside of the sprite section. So I'm going to click lump, new from file, and my Rapid F sound. To add it to your library of sounds, it needs a name. Now it can be as many characters as you want. I want to keep it simple. I'm just going to call it Rapid /fire. You can call it anything you want, but for now I'm going to call it Rapid /fire. Space and the name of the sound I want it to assign it to. So in this case it will be Rapid F. I'm going to copy that, save, go over to my decorate and paste it there. Save and save. Right now I've got a functioning weapon, selection order of 700, so there's a reasonable chance it'll switch that weapon when I run out of ammunition for another weapon. It uses 1 bullet when it fires, it gives you 25 when you pick it up. It uses clip ammo, it fires a single bullet, 5 damage each, with an accuracy of 3x3. This weapon is functioning, and the only thing to do now is give it a weapon slot. So I'm going to copy this name, save changes, and I'm going to create another lump, new, keyconf or keycon info, but you type in, but the lump itself is called keyconf. Okay. This is where you can slot weapons. It will go from 1 to 0 on your keyboard. It doesn't matter where you put it, you can put it anywhere you want. But if you're using something like Doom, for instance, and you put a weapon on slot 3, if the weapons from Doom are not coded into that slot, you won't be able to select the Doom weapons. For instance, I'll put it on slot 4, so I'm going to type in set slot space 4 space rapid gun. Now, if I type in give all, the chain gun will not be there. But if I type in chain gun, I'll now be able to switch to the chain gun. So the order it goes in is from left to right. So when I select a weapon from slot 4, the rapid gun is the first one, then it'll be the chain gun. The way I do this is decide how powerful the weapon is. So for example, if it's, I don't know, a rocket launcher, I'll put it on slot 5. If it's the BFG, I'll put it in slot 7, because that's where the BFG is slotted in Doom. But it doesn't matter where you slot it. But for now, I'll get rid of the chain gun, so it's just the rapid gun. The chain gun will still be usable, it'll just mean you can't select it by normal means. Save that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this and then give it a test run. Now I'm not going to type in give all to give the weapon, but I'm going to show you what it looks like on the floor. So I'm going to type in summon in the console, quotation mark, rapid gun, quotation mark. Now you may notice that's quite big, but I can always shrink that down in decorate. So I'm going to pick this up. You have acquired the rapid gun. I'm going to press 4 on the keyboard to select the weapon. I'm going to kill these monsters with it. So far I'm quite happy with that weapon's turned out. But I'm going to do a little bit of nip and tuck. So I want to make the animation look a bit more smoother. So what I'm going to do is go to my B sprite and I give a little bit of recall. I'll put that to 5 and that's to 4. And put that to 4 and that to 3. You may notice when I fired at the walls there was no little black dots to indicate that the bullets hit the wall and it's been embedded. That's a simple fix. I'm going to add in this part here decal bullet chip. Simple as that. And I'm going to put beneath that scale. This is a bit of math. Now it's quite big at the minute. I'm going to shrink it down. I'm going to put it to about a quarter of the size. So I'm going to type in 0.25. Save changes. And let's head back onto Doom to see how this looks. Now I made a bit of a underestimation here. I made it quite small. But you can play around with it just to get the size that you want. Obviously, when this episode's done I'm going to fix the size, but see how this performs now. Looks a lot more smoother now. And notice when I hit the wall it leaves little bullet marks. Okay, I've shown you how to make a basic bullet weapon, but I'm going to take this a step further now. So I'm back with a missile weapon. I've basically followed all the steps from the previous weapon. Only difference is I've changed the size of the rapid gun. So I'm going to make a missile launcher. I followed all the steps. I haven't quite given it a sound yet, but there's a reason for that. We're going to give this a missile or a projectile to fire. So I've taken some sprites from the game Marathon. These are actually a HD remaster. These are pretty good. So these do have rotations. So I'm just going to basically crop these out using the same method as before with the other weapons, and I'm just going to save these as individual sprites. However, there's a way of naming these as well. One thing to think about when naming these sprites is to think of how many rotations there are. You may want to stick between 5 to 8 rotations. Since this only has 5, I'm going to use 5 rotations. So what I'm going to do is give this a name of, so this is the front sprite, so the sprite that's facing towards us. Export as, I'm going to call this MIPR for missile projectile. This is just how I think of it. And I give it a frame of A and 1 rotation. So this is 1 rotation. This is when it's facing towards us. So this one's looking slightly to the side. And since there's only 5 animations, it's going to be called MIPR A2 A8. Now, because it doesn't have 8 rotations, Doom will automatically flip it if it is facing the other way. So if it's coming at you, coming near off your direction, but facing slightly to its right, it'll play the sprite. If it's facing to the left, Doom will flip it horizontally so it'll face the other way. Now this is the sideways on view. So I'm going to call it MIPR A3 A7. This one's going to be A4 A6. And the last one, when the projectile is facing away from you, MIPR A5. Now I'm going to put this into Doom. Now I'm going to move these so these are near enough, snap bang in the centre. So there, that'll do. Yeah. This is mainly for projectiles. So I've readjusted these. The rotation sorted. Okay, now we're going to create the projectile for the weapon. Now, the name rocket has already been taken, so we're going to give it our own name. So we'll type actor, missile, projectile. So just know what it is. Open squiggly bracket. I'm going to give this a radius and height. Even though this is three-dimensional, the radius is basically, if you give it a number of 4, it'll be 4 wide by 4 length. Yeah, 4 length by 4 wide, if that makes sense. So I'm going to give this a radius of 8 and a height of 6. I'm going to give this a speed of 20 and a damage of 15, since it's a smallish projectile. So the speed is basically how quick it travels, the damage is how much damage it'll deal on direct impact. Now keep that in mind, since this is a missile launcher. Now I could program a trail for this, but to keep it basic I'm just going to type plus rocket trail. That is known as a flag. Some things already have flags programmed in the background. If you're wanting to create something and get rid of a flag, like an already existing thing, for example, if I make a cacodemon not fly, you would reference the cacodemon and put instead of plus fly, put minus fly or float. But that's I'll come to that in another episode. So if I want to give this a rocket trail, I put plus rocket trail. That's them little grey particles you see at the back of the rocket launcher's rockets when you fire them. In the middle of this, you will need to tell it that's a projectile. Different things require different terminology to define it, what it is. For example, in the weapon, you'll put the weapon there, but projectiles, you put it round here. I think it's the same with monsters as well. You can give this what is called a C sound, where basically the second this projectile appears, it'll emit a sound. But since the weapon's doing that for me, I don't really need to do that. But what you can do is, if you give this like a long sound, perhaps like a long whistle sound. If you're playing deathmatch, for instance, if someone fires at you from a distance, you'll hear go, you're coming towards you. That's something you can do, but for this, I'm not going to do that. But what we'll do is give it a death sound. This is the sound it makes when it makes an impact on something, and it does its explode animation. So I'll put death sound in quotation marks. I'll come back to that because I'm going to add the sound later. I'm going to code the explosion. Now there are two ways of doing this. I'm going to do it this way. I will show you the other way of doing it. So I'm going to type in explosion radius. Because this is also three-dimensional, so if I type in 64, it'll be 64 by 64 by 64. I'm going to give it a radius of 128. An explosion damage of 20. So that will stack with the impact damage. So if you hit this projectile dead on an enemy, so it makes direct impact, it will stack with the damage. So explosion damage plus the damage on impact. If you shoot it near an enemy, so like it explodes on a wall or something, or hits another enemy and someone's nearby, they will only take the explosion damage. And it will. What happens is, with the radius, it will scale off, depending on how close they are to the explosion. If they're like taking the full brunt of it, they'll take the full 20 damage. But if they're near it, it'll base damage on how far they are from the explosion. As I put in states, open bracket, I'll type in spawn, colon. Now I'm going to give this the animation while it is in flight. It was called MIPR a one Doom tick loop. So as long as it's in the air, it'll just fly as normal. You can give it fancy animations. For example, if it's like a Doom imp projectile, it has them two alternating sprites. But since this only has one sprite, just give it one sprite. Now we're going to give this the death animation, but since we don't have any sprites for the explosion, let's go find some. So I'm going to get these explosion sprites from a website called CleanPNG. And same as before, I'm going to crop out the sprites that I want. Now, I might actually, I'll use these ones. These are quite closely resemble Doom's explosion sprites. You can use Doom's explosion sprites. If you just go on the Doom WAD, copy and paste the sprites from there. But I'm going to keep this 100% original. So, same as before, you crop the sprites out and you save as individual pictures. Okay, now that I've got those explosion sprites, I'm going to import them in what's happened here? Alright. And sort out the centering. Because I've done Dooming for quite a long time, this is all natural. Okay, now we can give this a explosion animation. So I'm going to type in death. And since this has an explosion radius, I'm going to type in MIPR B, because it starts from B, the explosion, 1 A underscore explode. Now the alternative way of doing this, the explosion, is you won't do this, instead you'll do it here. Type in the damage, so it'll be 20, 128 radius, and if you put true or false, if you type in true on this bit right here, if it'll mean that you as the shooter won't take any damage from your explosion. Examples of that would be the Blood Scourge from Hexen. That has an explosion radius, but it doesn't harm you. But we're not going to do that. And beneath that, since we only want it to explode on one frame, if you put multiple frames, it'll be a longer explosion. It really depends on what you're going to go for, really. If you're going to put something down that has like a constant radius effect, you'll put multiple frames. But since I'm going to keep this just an ordinary missile launcher, it'll explode on one frame. So I'll put MIPR, and then the rest of the sprites. You can put different numbers, like put 2. It doesn't mean it'll explode for 2 frames. It'll explode on the first frame, and it will be visually 2 frames will explode on 1 frame. If that makes sense. And then put MIPR C 3 D E F G 4. So it'll start fast and then slow down. This is just for an example. And then since the projectile is finished, when it's finished blowing up, you'll put stop, close, close. If you put something like -1 at the end and then put stop, it'll just be a floating sprite there. You don't really want that. Once the projectile is finished exploding, or it's finished, you put stop and it gets rid of it for you. But since this is exploding, I want to give the impression that it's actually exploding and make the sprite full bright. So I'm going to type bright for each one of these. If you've got something like explode or something like some sort of behaviour, bright always comes before. So put bright and bright. I'm going to copy this and go back up to the weapon, and I'm going to type in A underscore fire custom missile. Now there are loads of different things you do, unlike the bullet. So when I look at these, so I'm going to type quotation mark, name of the projectile. The angle, keep it 0, so because the weapon is centered. You can give it like a random offset so it goes in different directions, but I'm just going to keep it 0 since the weapon is centered. Use ammo, yes, it uses 1. Horizontal offset 0, vertical 0, close. If you just wanted to fire from the centre and nothing else, you don't have to do all of that. You can just keep it like that. It will just fire from the centre and use however much ammo it uses there, which I'm going to do for this. Now, unlike before, I'm going to find some sound effects. However, I don't quite like how long it is, so I'm going to change it slightly. I'm going to speed it up a little bit to give it more of a pop sound. So I'm going to multiply it by 2. Give it a little pause at the beginning, fade it out, and abruptly. Like I say, you don't have to do this, but this is my personal preference. In most scenarios, I won't use these sounds like this, but this is just for reference. So I've got my 2 sounds here. I've got Miss F, what I've called it. I've called this one Miss F for missile fire, and Miss X for the explosion sound. This is just to help me know which is which. So I'm going to type in missile launcher / fire, Miss F, missile launcher explode, Miss X. So I've put missile launcher fire sound here, and I've put the missile explosion sound here for the death sound. Okay, copy and paste this, and I'm going to put this on slot 5. Same slot as the rocket launcher from Doom. See, I've readjusted the sprite size for the rapid gun. That's the sprite for the missile launcher, decent size, and let's see how this works. You may notice it fires quite fast. This is just a coding oversight. I can always slow it down later. So I'm not happy with how fast that fires, so what I'm going to do is add more A's in this section here. So not quite happy with the missile itself. I'm going to give it a bright sprite there, and I'm going to make it a bit more powerful. So increase the damage to 25. That does have an impact on the explosion damage as well. And increase the explosion damage by 5. The missile travel speed to 35. Okay, now for the final weapon, a melee weapon. Like I say, follow all the steps from before, except I'm going to show you what will be different. Now I've been a bit lazy in taking some sprites and resources from another WAD that I'm working on, but I'm going to show you how to make randomized sounds, so you can use multiple sound effects which will be randomly selected. So I'm going to make a little pouch dagger. Basically it's the pouch dagger from Strife, but put into Doom and my own coding. So I'm going to type the $ random, then the name of the sound, so dagger swing. Now I'm going to put an open squiggly bracket and then put all the names of the sounds in there. So it'll be dagger swing 1. Now I can't quite do that just yet because I need to define what those sounds are. So I'm going to type in dagger swing 1. And the sound itself is called swing 1, so I'm going to get it swing 1. As a quick way of doing it, instead of just typing it all out, just paste it 3 more times, like so. Bang, bang, bang. There you are, you defined all them sounds. I'm going to do the same for the, it's impacting a person or an enemy. Same again. I'm just going to copy this for quickness. Replace the word swing with impact. Since there's only 2 impact sounds, I'm just going to get rid of the other 2. Impact. Sharp 1 and sharp 2. Now I'm going to code the sound for when it hits a wall. There's only 1 sound for that, so I don't need to put random. So dagger wall sharp W. So there you go. Okay, so this code has been taken directly from another WAD that I'm working on. And I'm just going to talk you through the things that I haven't discussed before. So we have kickback. That's basically how much the victim is pushed back from being hit by this weapon. The higher the number, the further back they'll go. And we have weapon.don't bob. So that means when you're running, it does that little bobbing animation. If you put that, it'll just remain still regardless. In fact, I'm just going to get rid of that. Weapon.no auto fire means that if you hold the trigger, it won't do anything. It'll do attack once, and you have to release and press it again to fire. However, if you put refire in at the end of the fire state, that'll mean it'll keep, as long as you hold the trigger down, it'll keep playing that. That's good if you want to hold hold the fire button, and when you release the fire button, it will continue from below that. But I'll come to that in another episode. Perhaps as a shotgun I've been wanting to create for this series, where if you hold the trigger down, it keeps firing, and when you release the fire button, it'll pump the shotgun. But I'll show you that in another episode, and I'm going to get rid of that. Melee weapon, it just tells the game that it's a melee weapon. You don't really need that. It's mainly for computer bots. And weapon.no alert, that means when you fire the weapon, it doesn't alert any monsters. So essentially it becomes suppressed or silenced. Okay, so we're going to give this what's called a punch, or just a melee attack. I'm going to type in a_custom punch. Give it a damage of 25. Ball no random. I think that's something to do with randomizing damage upon impact. I don't really mess with that. Ball use no ammo. Yes, yeah, because this melee weapon doesn't use ammo. Puff type is important. If you use bullet puff, it won't make any sounds at all. You have to create your own bullet puff, but that's easy to do. So I'm going to type in pouch puff, and I'll code that afterwards. And float range, that's basically the range of how far your melee will go. So I'm going to give it a range of 60, which is a decent range. Instead of typing this out, I do struggle to remember how to create bullet puffs because what I do is once I've created something, I just copy and paste it and just change the coding to how I desire. That's mainly for my own projects. I never copy from Doom Wiki. I've stopped doing that because they don't really like it when you do that. So everything that I've created has been from before, and I've just copy and pasted my own stuff and just renamed it wherever necessary. Okay, so what I have here is the pouch dagger puff. So I'll go through what all these mean. So no block map means that it's not physical. It can't block anything. No gravity means that it won't drop, so it's not affected by gravity. No extreme death means regardless how much damage this will do, they will not enter the jib animation. Puff on actors, that means that when you hit something, it plays the spawn animation. Because without that, it'll just have the blood. Render style, that makes it so you can make things translucent, you can make it fuzzy like the spectres. You can even put it to what's called stencil, so it'll be like a solid colour. For now it's called translucent, and the alpha is how translucent you want it to be. But the max, if you put the alpha to 1, it'll just be solid. If you put it to 0.1, it'll be nearly invisible. So for the purposes of this, it'll be 0.6. Now, you have 3 sound slots. You have the C sound, which basically the sound it makes when it hits an enemy. The attack sound, the sound it makes when it hits a wall. And the active sound is the sound it makes when you miss. The V-speed is basically how quick the puff goes up. Without V-speed, it will just be solid. It looks fancier when the puff's going upwards. And the spawn animation is just basically how you see the puff. I'm not giving this a spawn animation since this doesn't have a spawn sprite. Or sprite where it's on the ground. It doesn't have an Doom WAD number, so you can't actually place it on the map. So the only way to really acquire this is to either cheat for it or place it in the player's inventory. For the purposes of this, I'm just going to cheat for it. But yes, making a melee is just that simple. So I'm going to put this in slot 1. That will mean that you will no longer have your fist. So here's the pouch dagger. See how these are not alerted by that? I suppose it's got a good stealth weapon. So that's been today's episode of How to Make a Doom Mod. We've been over how to make 3 simple weapons from scratch. Now be sure to tune in next time where I show you how to make a basic ghoul. Now before I end this episode, I'm going to explain why I've said ghoul. It's because that is the easiest, most basic monster to make in Doom, believe it or not. Reason for it doesn't require any rotations, is the animations are very simple, and I can go over different behaviours. So for now, thank you very much for watching today's episode. I hope you've learned something new. I hope this was useful. Be sure to give any criticisms below if there's anything that I did right or wrong. And I'll see you in the next episode. Happy dooming. You have been watching the Mr. Skulltag channel. Be sure to check out the links in the description for more short films, entertaining videos, gaming videos, or check out our blog for future updates.